Seen multiple NFL contracts over the past couple years fail massively. It happens every year. We get a big free agent class where a team sees one player have a really good year and they'll decide, okay, they're definitely worth this money. Let's throw a huge bag at them. I promise you, it happens every year. And I'm willing to bet in 2024, some team like the Chicago Bears or even the Commanders are going to overpay for a free agent. And this time next year, you're going to have fans saying, yo, why did we overpay for this player? I don't understand. I promise you it's going to happen. These are some NFL contracts over the past couple years that failed massively, and in the end, teams ended up regretting it. Starting off with, unfortunately, my favorite team, the New York Giants, and Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay was such a unique receiver. He was never known for his speed or anything like that. He was basically known for his jump ball skills and basically that sort of nature. He's not going to necessarily burn a receiver or anything like that. He's going to straight up moss him while they're trying to get him up in the air. And that's exactly what the Giants signed him for in 2021. The Giants desperately wanted a receiver that was going to complement their quarterback, Daniel Jones, who was, I guess, known for his deep ball skills. Even though when you look at it now, yeah, Daniel Jones was never really, okay, we're not going to get into that. In 2021, the New York Giants signed Kenny Golladay to a 4-year, $72 million deal, and for the most part, things were working out pretty well. He didn't do much against the Falcons or the Broncos, but in week 3 against the Saints, he had his first 100-yard game as a New York Giants player. But after that, that is pretty much where Kenny Golladay peaked for the most part. Golladay would only have 2 more games with 50-plus yards that season, ending his season with 37 receptions for over 500 yards and 0 touchdowns. He played in 14 games and didn't record a single touchdown. 2022 looked to be a bounce-back year for Kenny Golladay. Brian Daboll was now the new head coach, Mike Cutler was offensive coordinator, and Daniel Jones was going to have a new direction. However, everybody else turned it around, except Kenny Golladay. Despite the new change to the New York Giants, Kenny Golladay would not get better, and he would somehow get worse, dropping pivotal passes and just struggling overall as a player when he played. Eventually, this led to the Giants phasing him out of the rotation for Isaiah Hodgins, who basically just came off the streets for the New York Giants and was basically outperforming Kenny Golladay immediately. Galladay's first touchdown as a New York Giants player would not come into Week 18 of the NFL season against the Philadelphia Eagles, where he mossed Darius Slay in the end zone. And while he was a horrible player overall for the New York Giants, he had one of the best catches as a New York Giants player that year. So let's give him credit for that at least. But great things unfortunately don't last long, as on March 15, 2023, the New York Giants would finally part ways with Kenny Golladay after 2 seasons. So what went wrong with Kenny Golladay? Well, it's pretty simple for the most part. Well, for starters, I'm going to give Kenny Golladay the benefit of the doubt, but then I'm going to criticize him. The benefit of the doubt, he played under Jason Garrett, who, let's be honest, ran a pretty bad offense for the New York Giants. And when I mean ran a pretty bad offense, I mean the next player we're going to discuss is J.C. Jackson, and honestly, the timing of this works perfectly because at the making of this video, J.C. Jackson actually just got released by the New England Patriots, so what better timing to put him on this list than right now? From 2020 to 2021, J.C. Jackson quickly established himself as a ball hawk in the NFL. From those 2 years, he tallied 17 interceptions in those 2 years, which is pretty insane when you think about it for the most part. But for the most part, J.C. Jackson was mostly a product for Bill Belichick and his scheme, so it's not surprising of what happened next. In 2022, the Chargers will sign J.C. Jackson to a 5-year, $82.5 million deal. Shortly after signing this deal, he will have to undergo surgery, causing him to miss the preseason and the season opener for the Chargers. But when JC came back, let's just say things did not go well for him or the Chargers. J.C. Jackson was one of the worst corners in the league in 2022 when he was playing. In the 5 games he played, he gave up almost 300 yards in coverage and a dang near perfect passer rating when he was targeted. To be specific, his passer rating allowed was a 149.9. Like I said, a near perfect passer rating allowed when he was targeted. That is crazy. But to make matters worse for the Chargers, after only playing 5 games in 2022, he would rupture his Achilles against the Seahawks, and he would miss the entire rest of the season after this. Then in 2023, he would play a few games for the Chargers before being traded back to the New England Patriots after their rookie corner Christian Gonzalez got hurt. J.C. Jackson wouldn't do much there either, and like I said before, as the making of this video, he did just get cut by the New England Patriots not too long ago. J.C. Jackson is going to be the prime reason why you don't need to overpay for certain players, and why teams need to find out more if this player is actually good or is he a product of a certain system, and J.C. Jackson was just that. Now, it's not often that rookies are on lists like this, but that's the thing. There is a rookie on this list, and that rookie being JaMarcus Russell. Now, this is going to sound very weird when I say this, but JaMarcus Russell was actually pretty good for the NFL, but not for the way you think it is. But he set a standard for rookie contracts in the NFL where they can't go over a certain amount of years, and I think they can't go over a certain amount of money as well. And JaMarcus Russell, because of what he did in 2007, was the main reason of why that happened. JaMarcus Russell, after being drafted, would hold out a training camp all the way into the NFL season before signing a 6-year deal worth $68 million and $31.5 million guaranteed, being one of the largest rookie contracts in NFL history. And I think everybody who watches the NFL knows what happened next. JaMarcus Russell went on to become one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history after signing this deal. Okay, not directly after signing this deal, but 2 seasons later. He would end his 2009 season pretty abysmal, only throwing for around 1,000 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, having one of the lowest completion percentage that season, the lowest quarterback ratings, and the fewest amount of touchdowns by qualified quarterbacks. Now, despite him being abruptly terrible, the plan was for him to be the quarterback regardless. However, the Raiders would trade for Redskins quarterback Jason Campbell, and a couple weeks later, JaMarcus Russell would be gone from the team. Russell would try his best to attempt to come back and try to get multiple NFL teams to get him to work out. Essentially, he sent a letter to all 32 NFL teams asking for a workout. However, no team wanted anything to do with JaMarcus Russell, and in the end, he ended up being one of the biggest draft busts in NFL history and really never getting a chance to redeem himself like he, possibly could have. But in the end, you have to really ask yourselves, do you really think he deserved a second chance after all the stuff he went through behind the scenes? JaMarcus Russell allegedly had an addiction to codeine syrup, which he actually got arrested for, and this is said to be one of the main reasons why no NFL team didn't want to take a chance on him. Codeine syrup, or aka purple drink. But most of everybody who watched this video knows the unfortunate story of JaMarcus Russell, and this is pretty much how it went. And it's crazy that a rookie contract is on this list because you don't get rookie contracts on this list often. Brock Osweiler. I really question why this contract was even given to this dude in the first place. Like, what? Why? Now, I want you guys to think about the Nick Foles contract for a minute. Now, think about Brock Osweiler. That's basically what his contract was if you really think about it. Without the Super Bowl, obviously. Now, despite only starting 7 games in 2015, Brock Osweiler had a better season than Peyton Manning. Yes, the starter in 2015. Peyton Manning was abysmal in 2015. Don't let the Super Bowl fool you. Brock Osweiler, on the other hand, in 2015, had over 1,000 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Like I said, still somehow better than Peyton Manning. After performing in a few good games that year for the Broncos in 2015, he signed a whopping 4 years, $72 million contract worth $17 million guaranteed with the Houston Texans. And yeah, this contract was pretty bad. He threw over 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions. Somehow he led the Texans to the playoffs, but it was in a really weak AFC South for the most part. He also won a playoff game with the Raiders, who also were pretty bad. They had Connor Cook starting at quarterback after Derek Carr got hurt. Eventually, though, he ran into the Patriots, where he finally got humbled and he lost that game. Eventually, the Texans saw this experiment was quickly over, and in 2017, they traded him to the Cleveland Browns. This was a weird move from the Browns, but in the end, it ended up working out for them. They were going to absorb Osweiler's cap, but for the most part, they were going to get draft picks in return for him. So just for taking him basically. So this was a really creative move for the Browns. But he was released a couple months later and signed with the Broncos. He then had another stint with the Broncos, as I said, and then the Miami Dolphins, and then eventually he retired in 2019. Once again, another case of overpaying for a guy because he played good as a backup, and that's about it. Teams at this point though have learned their lesson from doing that though. Next player we talk about is Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is going to go down as one of the best running backs of the 2010s, as the 2010s featured a number of star-studded running backs, and Le'Veon Bell is one of them. During his time with the Steelers, he was a first-team All-Pro, a two-time second-team All-Pro, and a three-time Pro Bowler. However, in 2018, all that would come crashing down after Le'Veon Bell would hold out from the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2018. It was said that Le'Veon Bell held out due to the fact that the Steelers did not offer him enough guaranteed money. It was said that the Steelers offered Le'Veon Bell a 5-year deal worth $70 million. However, Le'Veon Bell declined that deal. While this contract on paper is good, obviously, at least to us, Le'Veon Bell didn't think so. He wanted more guaranteed money and he declined this deal. Instead, in 2019, he signed a 4-year deal with the New York Jets worth $52.5 million and $35 million guaranteed. And let's just say his entire run there will be very disappointing. In 2019, he had over 700 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, with 461 yards through the air and 1 touchdown. However, in 2020, he would get out to a very rough start, barely producing anything for the New York Jets. And then on Twitter, someone caught him in his likes saying that the Jets should trade Le'Veon Bell. Shortly after this, on October 13th, Le'Veon Bell would be released for the New York Jets. He was signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. He would also make stops with the Baltimore Ravens and also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since Le'Veon Bell has left the NFL, he's had careers in both the rap game and also the boxing game, where he actually boxed Adrian Peterson, yes, his fellow other greatest running back of the 2010s, if I should say that. And Le'Veon Bell actually won that fight. Le'Veon Bell has said in an interview that he does regret leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's one thing that he wished he could take back. And he has also said in a recent interview that he does want to attempt the NFL comeback. Now, Le'Veon Bell is 32 years old, so in all likelihood, the chance of this happening is pretty slim to none. But we have seen Adrian Peterson come back a few times, so it's definitely possible. Who knows? Nick Foles. Unfortunately, there is not a Hall of Fame for backup quarterbacks, but if there was, Nick Foles will be a first ballot Hall of Famer for that class, as he is one of the only backup quarterbacks in NFL history to win a Super Bowl, as he did with the Eagles in 2018 when he won against the Patriots 41-33. He took over for an injured Carson Wentz and led him all the way to this game, where in that game, he went 28 for 43 for 373 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Carson Wentz would once again get injured going into the playoffs, so once again, Nick Foles had to take over, and he would beat the Bears, although be it by the infamous doink, and then he was so close to beating the Saints, but because of Alshon Jeffrey's lazy hands, they lost their game. Now, originally, the Eagles had picked up a $20 million option on Nick Foles. However, Foles basically told the Eagles that he would avoid the option as he wanted to make some money on another team, and he knew he had a chance to. And that's exactly what happened. As on March 13, 2019, Foles signed a 4-year, $88 million contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This contract also featured $50 million guaranteed and also up to $102 million in incentives. And this might be the prime example of things going bad really quickly, as in week 1 of the 2019 season, he suffered a shoulder injury that will keep him out for weeks against the Chiefs. He would eventually come back, and he was okay against the Colts, throwing for 296 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I mean, they lost, but he still didn't play that bad, I guess. But it was against the Buccaneers where the beginning of the end officially happened, as in that game, he went 7 for 14 for 93 yards, 1 interception, and 2 fumbles. In that game, he would be benched for Gardner Minshew after he went down 25-0 in that game. Eventually, Gardner Minshew would take the starting job for the rest of the season, and he would end his Jaguars career right then and there, only playing 4 games with 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. After only 1 season with the team, he will be traded to the Chicago Bears in 2020. Spent 2 years there, and he last played with the Indianapolis Colts in 2022. prime example of not overpaying for certain guys, because you never know if they're just a system guy who played good in one system, or they're just, what they are, fraud basically. What kind of what Nick Foles was, but I'm not gonna do that to him, honestly. For example, guys like Jay Cutler. Now, Jay Cutler spent his first few years in the NFL with the Denver Broncos, where for the most part, he wasn't exactly doing anything special, but his best season would come that year with the Broncos in 2008, when he threw 25 touchdowns to 18 interceptions. Then in 2009, he was traded to the Chicago Bears, where that same year, he threw 27 touchdowns to 26 interceptions for over 3,000 yards passing. Then in 2010, he would go 10-5 as a starter, throwing for over 3,000 yards once again, 23 touchdowns and 16 interceptions, somehow leading the Bears to an NFC Championship appearance. After that season, Jay Cutler was a pretty average quarterback. In 2011, he threw for over 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. In 2012, he threw for over 3,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. In 2013, he threw for over 19 touchdowns once again, but this time 12 interceptions. But then in 2014, he threw over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, however, a league high 18 interceptions. So he was throwing some good touchdowns that year, but he continued to throw a lot of picks, which was a problem. But despite the fact he was an average quarterback, he managed to get a 7-year, $126 million, $54 million guaranteed contract with the Chicago Bears. After that, for the most part, he fell apart. He continued to be just an average quarterback for the most part for the rest of his career. Once again, not doing anything special to warrant that contract whatsoever. Eventually, after the 2016 season, the Bears had had enough and they would cut Jay Cutler from the team. And then he signed with the Miami Dolphins, where things there wouldn't get a lot better for the most part. He threw over 2,000 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. But like I said before, it wouldn't make things a lot better. He was still just an average quarterback for the most part. Since his time in the NFL, there were a few ways people describe Jay Cutler. Immature, doesn't care about football, a jerk, just very lazy. Like I said, there were a lot of things people used to describe Jay Cutler for the most part. There was even a report in 2017 that Dolphins players apparently didn't like Jay Cutler. Legendary specialist Devin Hester also said that Jay Cutler was one of the worst teammates he ever had. Brandon Marshall said that Jay Cutler was one of the worst quarterbacks he ever played with. And he's played with a few different quarterbacks, so that says a lot. To be specific, he's played with 17 quarterbacks, including guys like Chad Heen, Jake Plummer, and Josh McCown. So, the fact that he said Jay Cutler was the worst says a lot. With all that being said, now take that however you want to take it. Nnamdi Asomugha. Honestly, if I said that name right, I'm going to be surprised. Asomugha was actually a pretty good corner for the most part for the first few years of his NFL career, specifically with the Oakland Raiders. He was a 2-time first-team All-Pro in 2008 and 2010, a 2-time second-team All-Pro in 2006 and 2009, and he made the Pro Bowl 3 times as well. Then in 2011, Asomugha decided to hit the open market, where in that offseason, he was one of the best free agents available in this class. Eventually, on July 29th, he would sign a 5-year, $60 million deal worth $25 million guaranteed with the Philadelphia Eagles. However, this is where Asomugha's play began to fall off completely. Now, while his season in 2011 was pretty good enough to be a Pro Bowl alternate, it's what happened after this season that would be pretty bad from Asomugha. Asomugha was giving up around 698 yards in coverage with 5 touchdowns and allowed a very horrendous 120.6 NFL passer rating allowed. After failing to come to terms on a restructured deal, the Eagles cut Asomugha after 2 seasons. He then signed with the 49ers, where he only played 3 games and only started 1 there before being waived from them as well. Then in December of 2013, Asomugha would retire and he would sign a 1-day contract to retire as an Oakland Raider. Asomugha went from being one of the best corners in the league at one point to being one of the worst and quickly cut from a team. Dang, life comes at you fast pretty much. Now, in Asomugha's defense, the Eagles had this man playing zone. This guy was mostly known for playing press and in-your-face type of corner. But when he played zone, he was never the same player. And that's kind of why the Eagles kind of contributed to his fall off. But in the end, the Eagles, this contract is on them. And that is why it is a massive failure for the Eagles in the end. Russell Wilson is a guy who doesn't need a lot of introduction for the most part. During his time with the Seattle Seahawks, he was a pretty prominent quarterback. He was a Super Bowl champion, he was an All-Pro in 2019, and he was a 9-time Pro Bowler from 2015 to 2012, 2017 to 2021. You name it, this guy was a Pro Bowler. After a long career with the Seahawks in 2022, he was traded to the Denver Broncos. In exchange, the Seahawks got back a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks at that, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick, along with Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. This trade was seen as unavoidable to teammates on the Seattle Seahawks. They said that Russell Wilson essentially stopped hearing about the team in the midseason mark, and it seemed like this trade was almost bound to happen no matter what team he got traded to. It was said that there were a lot of problems within the Seahawks organization with Russell Wilson. It was said that he did not approve of the firing of Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, and the firing of the offensive line coach Mike Osweiler. Wilson also wanted Pete Carroll and also John Schneider fired from the team, although Wilson would deny this. Before the regular season started, Russell Wilson was on a 5-year, $245 million deal with the Broncos, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in NFL history, not just the league right now. Wilson would turn in his worst year as a starter in 2022, going 4-11, passed over 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. There were major problems within the Broncos that year. Russell Wilson was apparently dealing with a shoulder injury. Nathaniel Hackett was a terrible head coach, and the teammates were not too fond of Russell Wilson that year as well. He would slightly improve in 2023, going 7-8 as a starter, passed over 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. The Broncos were actually hot at one point. Then he lost to the New England Patriots, and then they pretty much fell out of the playoff hunt altogether. Wilson was then benched for the rest of the season for the Broncos, and according to Sean Payton and the rest of the team, this was due to preserve his financial flexibility, if that makes sense. Now, the Broncos have yet to make a decision on whether Russell Wilson will stay with the team, but from a financial standpoint, it would be pretty hard to move Russell Wilson right now. So if I had to make a guess, I would say that Russell Wilson will be on the Broncos next year. But I do think the Broncos will draft a quarterback to eventually replace Russell Wilson in the end. Not only is his contract pretty bad from a financial standpoint, but if you look at what the Broncos gave up and what the Seahawks got, yeah, it's pretty bad. They got back Devon Witherspoon, Boya Mafe, Derek Hall, Charles Cross, a few other guys that had produced pretty well for them for the most part. So this contract for the most part for the Broncos has been a failure all around, and the trade has also been a failure along with that. Finally, we're going to talk about arguably the worst contract in NFL history, one that you pretty much see on every worst contract list in the NFL to this point. Yes, I'm obviously talking about Albert Haynesworth. At one point, Albert Haynesworth was legitimately one of the best defensive tackles in the league at one point. From 2007 to 2008, he was one of the best tackles in the league. He racked up 40 tackles and 6 sacks in 2007 and 51 tackles and 8.5 sacks in 2008. Now, Haynesworth was a great player, but unfortunately, he was no stranger to getting controversy during his time with the Tennessee Titans. On October 1st, 2006, in the third quarter, Julius Jones had just scored a touchdown in the game. During the play, Andre Goll fell to the ground and his helmet would be removed by Albert Haynesworth. He would then stomp on the head of Goll. Remember, wearing spiky cleats. Yeah. Imagine how much pain that guy was in. Worst part about this is a gash would open on Goll's forehead, and he was nearly inches away from possibly missing his eye altogether. Goll also said he would experience headaches and blurred vision days after this incident. Haynesworth would get 2 15-yard penalties, one for obviously the stomp, and then he would proceed to take his helmet off and throw it to the turf. Obviously, he would be ejected from the game. Then a day later, Haynesworth would be suspended by the NFL 5 games without pay, becoming the second multi-game suspension for an on-the-field incident at the time. Goll later had to receive 30 stitches on his head after this game. As I said, that would not be his only incident, as on September 9, 2007 against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Haynesworth would be called for unnecessary roughness when he slammed Maurice Jones-Drew to the ground after a tackle. After this, he was fined $5,000 by the NFL. Finally, after 5 seasons with the Tennessee Titans, he would sign a 7-year, $100 million contract with the Washington Redskins on the first day of free agency. This also included $41 million guaranteed, and this could also reach up to $115 million guaranteed if all incentives were met. Now get this, he was actually offered around $120 million to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, more money. However, he took a discounted pay for the Redskins because of a larger fan base and media outlet. And it wouldn't be long for problems with Albert Haynesworth to start for the most part. So losing 45-12 to the New York Giants on Monday Night Football, Haynesworth questioned the scheme of defensive coordinator Greg Bloch. Haynesworth would say he could not survive another season in this system if it stays the way it is. To make matters worse, he refused to participate in off-season workouts with the team, and when he came to workouts, he was in poor physical condition and could not even pass a basic fitness test. He also did not like the fact he was playing in a 3-4 scheme rather than a 4-3 scheme with the Tennessee Titans. Now, in case you might want to know, what is the difference between a 3-4 and a 4-3 defense? Well, it's pretty simple. A 4-3 defense consists of 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers, whereas a 3-4 consists of 3 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers. So yeah, pretty straightforward. In 2009, Haynesworth would appear in 12 games, finishing with 4 sacks, 37 tackles, and 5 passes defended. Most notably in 2009, Haynesworth did absolutely one of the most laziest things an NFL player ever did. Just gave up on an NFL play. Haynesworth gets put to the ground by a guard and just stays there for a couple seconds and makes no effort to get Michael Vick, who is still trying to make a play. And while yes, there's a pretty good chance you weren't going to get Michael Vick, he made no effort whatsoever, unlike the rest of his defensive players who were trying to make an effort and just slowly got up and said, you know what, I'm not doing this, I give up. After some problems throughout the preseason, Haynesworth announced that he would not participate in the remainder of the 2010 season for the Washington Redskins. Then, after a dispute at practice in which Haynesworth said he was quote-unquote ill, he was suspended by the Washington Redskins for conduct detrimental to the club, according to Mike Shanahan. Shanahan also said that Haynesworth refused to cooperate in a variety of ways, and not only because of his practice absence. Eventually, the Washington Redskins had enough, and they traded him to the New England Patriots on July 28, 2011 for a 5th round pick in 2013. However, after a confrontation with assistant head coach Pepper Johnson on the sidelines, he would be placed on the waivers by the New England Patriots and picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He would appear in 7 games for them, but on February 15, 2012, he was released from the team. Where did it all go wrong for Albert Haynesworth in the end? This guy simply stopped caring about football and put absolutely no effort on the field whatsoever. Well, in his defense, like some of these guys, at least he tried. Some of these other guys didn't. Actually, I can't even say he tried. At least he played. I'm not even going to say he tried. At least he played, honestly. Haynesworth is consistently considered to have one of the worst NFL contracts in NFL history, and in my opinion, it's pretty much warranted in my opinion, especially when I see a guy take a nap on the field and basically say, you know what, I give up. When you do that, that shows me the work ethic you have for this game and the type of player you usually are. With Albert Haynesworth, that's the type of player he was, lazy and no work ethic whatsoever. Free agency is going to be a pivotal part in the NFL this year, and it is pretty much every year. So be on the lookout for contracts like this, because there's going to be one of those contracts every year that ends up failing. But with that being said, I'm going to end the video off here. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel, tap the bell icon for future football content, sports content in general, and follow me on social medias down below in the description, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that is down below in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.